My name is Claire Morgan, and at 35, I thought my life was finally calm, steady, and mine. I had worked my way up to become a senior data analyst for a growing tech company in Tampa, Florida. My days were full of numbers, patterns, and progress. The kind of life I had dreamed about as a kid when I used to lie awake in a small, creaky house wondering if things would ever get better. For years, I told myself I had escaped my past. I had built something solid, safe, successful. But that illusion shattered one ordinary evening with a single knock on my apartment door. That sound changed everything. I opened it and came face to face with the woman who had walked out of my life 26 years ago, my mother. Behind her stood a young man I barely recognized, my half-brother. Their eyes didn't hold love or longing. They held expectation and something darker. I didn't know it yet, but that night would drag me back into the storm I thought I'd outrun. Growing up in rural Indiana, life wasn't easy. My dad, Thomas Morgan, worked endless hours at a rundown diner flipping pancakes and washing dishes just to keep the lights on. My mom, Evelyn, had once been full of energy, but after years of struggling, she grew distant, restless. One night when I was 9, she packed a suitcase and left. No warning, no goodbye. Just the sound of the front door closing. And my dad standing there too, stunned to speak. That night he sat at the kitchen table for hours staring at the empty chair across from him, while I listened from the hallway, clutching a stuffed bear until dawn. After she left, it was just the two of us. Dad tried to pretend everything was fine, but I saw how tired he was. He'd come home smelling of grease and coffee, his hands raw from scrubbing the grill. We barely scraped by. Some nights' dinner was just toast and canned soup. But he never complained. He'd smile and say we'd make it somehow. When the bills piled up, I started helping where I could. Babysitting neighbors, kids sweeping floors at a convenience store before school. Every dollar counted. I learned early that survival meant working harder than everyone else. School became my escape. I poured myself into math and science, losing track of time, solving problems that made sense when nothing else did. Teachers noticed my focus and pushed me toward scholarships. By the time I hit 17, I had a full ride to a state university majoring in data science. It felt like the universe had finally opened a door for me. I left home with 2 suitcases and a promise to Dad that I'd make something of myself. College was brutal, but it shaped me. I worked nights in a coffee shop and cleaned offices on weekends. I'd leave work at midnight, study till 3, and drag myself to class by 8, exhausted but driven. I knew no one was coming to save me. Every test I aced, every paycheck I saved brought me closer to freedom. I still called Dad every Sunday. He'd tell me about the diner, the leaky roof, the regulars who still asked about me. His pride kept me going. After graduation, I landed my first job in Tampa. I rented a tiny apartment, barely big enough for a bed and desk, but it was mine. From there, I climbed the ranks, project after project, late nights, and endless spreadsheets. 10 years later, I was leading my own team, earning more money than I ever thought possible. I'd send Dad a few hundred every month to help with repairs and groceries. He always tried to refuse, but I wouldn't take no for an answer. He'd raised me single-handedly. The least I could do was make his life easier, but no amount of success erased the ache of my mother's absence. Every birthday, she'd send a card with a few hollow words. No calls, no visits, just neat handwriting that meant nothing. Sometimes I'd read those cards and feel that old sting. Why wasn't I enough for her to stay? But I buried the question and kept going. I told myself she was gone for good. Then came that autumn evening. The air was cool outside. I was halfway through a movie when the knock came. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door and time stopped. There she was, Evelyn Morgan, or whatever name she went by now. Her hair was perfectly styled, her smile rehearsed, and beside her stood a young man, maybe 20, early 20s, sharp-dressed, phone in hand. My half-brother, Ryan. Claire, she said, like she'd seen me yesterday. Her voice dripped with warmth that didn't reach her eyes. I froze, every childhood memory colliding at once. She hugged me before I could react, her perfume overwhelming my senses. Ryan muttered, "Hey," barely looking up from his phone. They stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. My apartment suddenly felt smaller, colder. She started talking fast, saying she missed me, saying she'd been thinking about reconnecting. I listened, but the words felt empty. Then came the turn. "I heard you're doing really well," she said, smiling tight. "Big job, big money, right?" Her eyes darted around my place, taking in every expensive detail. Then she dropped it. "Ryan's starting college," she said, "and tuition is brutal, $60,000 for the first year. We could use some help, maybe $3,000 a month until we get settled." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard right. 60,000. 3,000 a month. It wasn't a request. It was a demand wrapped in a guilt trip. Ryan finally looked up, smirking. "Nice place," he said. "Little small, though, for someone making what you make." He propped his sneakers on my coffee table like he owned it. You could probably afford something better. Their arrogance hit me like ice water. I kept my voice steady, but my hands trembled. So this is why you're here, I said. For money. Mom's smile faltered just a second. Oh, Claire, don't say it like that, we're family. Family helps family, right? That word family stung like a knife. Where was family when Dad was working himself sick to feed me? When I was cleaning offices at midnight just to afford books? I wanted to scream, but I stayed calm. I told her I'd think about it. She smiled again, too sweet, too fast. Ryan rolled his eyes, muttering something about how stingy I was. They left soon after, promising to call. When I shut the door, I stood there for a long time, listening to the silence. My heart beat loud in the empty room. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. That night I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed with a message from her, thanks for listening. Honey, we'll talk soon. I stared at it for a long time. Something in me whispered this wasn't over. I had no idea just how far she'd go next. The next morning, the Florida sun streamed through my window, but the light felt cold. I kept replaying last night in my head. Her smile, her tone, the way she said family like it was a weapon. I tried to shake it off. Threw myself into work, but I couldn't focus. Every line of code blurred into her face and that smug look on Ryan's. By lunch, I gave in and texted her, saying we could meet somewhere public, maybe talk things through. I told myself it was closure, but deep down I think I was hoping for answers. We met at a crowded cafe downtown, the kind of place filled with chatter and clinking cups where you could hide in plain sight. She was already there when I walked in, sitting at a corner table with Ryan, beside her, both sipping iced coffee, like they owned the place. She looked up and smiled that same perfect smile. Claire, I'm so happy you came, she said, her voice honey sweet. Ryan barely glanced up from his phone, muttering something that sounded like finally. I sat down, feeling the weight of 1,000 memories pressing against my chest. She started talking before I could even take a sip of coffee. She said she wanted to explain everything, why she left, why she never called. Her story sounded polished, practiced. Your father made it impossible for me to stay in touch, she said, her eyes shining, like tears were coming. He turned you against me. I tried for years, Claire, I really did. I wanted to believe her. For a second I almost did. But then I remembered Dad sitting in that tiny kitchen alone night after night, hoping she'd call. I remembered the stack of letters he'd sent that came back unopened. My throat tightened. She was lying and she knew it. Ryan finally spoke without looking up. Mom says you're doing great. Maybe you can help us out. His voice was casual, careless. I asked help with what exactly? He grinned like it was obvious. My car's a piece of junk and I need something decent for school. Maybe a Mustang or a Charger, something cool. Oh, and a new phone. This one's trash. He tossed it on the table like proof. I stared at him, stunned. He was serious. Evelyn jumped in quickly, her tone all soft persuasion. You have so much now, Claire. She said you can afford to give a little. We're family. You don't want to see your brother struggle, do you? Something in me snapped. I'd worked for every inch of my success. Every late night, every missed meal, every tear shed over bills and exams. And now they sat here acting like I owed them something. I set my cup down hard, the sound sharp against the table. I said quietly, I worked for what I have. Dad and I had nothing after you left. I'm not your bank. Her face changed in an instant. The warmth vanished, replaced by something cold, sharp. You're selfish, she hissed. After everything I gave you, this is how you repay me. I almost laughed, the irony so thick it hurt. Gave me? You gave me nothing I wanted to say, but my throat burned too hot. Ryan leaned back, arms crossed, sneering. Figures you'd be like this. Mom said you were all about yourself. His words were like little knives, careless but cruel. The cafe grew quieter, people starting to look our way. Evelyn leaned closer, her voice low but fierce. You'll regret this, Claire. You'll see. I stood up, chair scraping the floor loud enough to turn heads. I don't owe you anything, I said, and walked out before my voice could break. Outside, the air hit me, hard, the Florida humidity pressing against my skin as I tried to breathe. My hands shook all the way to the car. I sat there for a while, watching the cafe window, half expecting her to come storming after me. But she didn't. I drove home with my mind spinning. I kept thinking maybe that was the end, maybe she'd give up. But deep down I knew better. People like her don't give up. They dig until there's nothing left to take. That afternoon, as I tried to work, my door buzzer rang. The sound jolted me like a slap. I froze, staring at the intercom screen, and sure enough, there they were again. Evelyn smiling too wide, Ryan standing behind her looking bored, against every instinct. I buzzed them in just to avoid another shouting match in the hallway. They walked in like they owned the place again. Evelyn started with small talk, asking about my job, my schedule, even my salary. I kept my answers short, but she kept pressing. She said Ryan's classes were starting soon and they just needed help for a few months. The same pitch, but dressed up nicer this time. I tried to steer the conversation away, got up to grab some water. When I came back, my heart dropped. Ryan was sitting at my desk. My laptop opened, the screen glowing. I saw the tab and my blood ran cold. It was my online banking page. "What are you doing?" I snapped, crossing the room fast. He looked up calm, almost amused. "Just checking it out," he said like it was nothing. Evelyn stood behind him, arms folded. "We were just curious," she said. "You've got so much, Claire, why hide it?" For a second, everything went silent inside me like a vacuum. Then fury roared up so fast I couldn't breathe. I grabbed the laptop from his hands, the chair scraping back hard. "You don't ever touch my stuff," I said, my voice shaking but low. My screen showed open login attempts, multiple failed passwords. A reset page waiting for confirmation. They'd been trying to get into my accounts. I stared at them both, and it hit me they hadn't come to reconnect, they'd come to steal. My mother looked right at me, her face cold, no more pretending. "Your father was always a failure," she said. "I had to see if you turned out any better." Ryan laughed under his breath, adding, "Yeah, he was pathetic. Guess you got lucky." The rage that hit me was pure lightning. I stepped forward, phone in hand, and said, "Get out, or I'm calling the police right now." Evelyn's mask cracked, panic flickering for the first time. "You'd call the cops on your own, mother," she said, her voice sharp. Ryan tried to sound calm, but his voice trembled. "Chill out. It's not that deep," he said. I held my ground. "You hacked Dad's email," I said. "You tried to break into my accounts. That's enough for jail." She froze, eyes narrowing just for a moment. Then she grabbed Ryan's arm and hissed, "We're not done, Claire." They stormed out, slamming the door behind them. I locked every bolt, then slid down the wall, shaking. My laptop was still open, the cursor blinking like an accusation. I checked my email, and there it was, a forwarded message from Dad's account sent to hers showing my company name, my position, my salary. The subject line said, "Proud of her." She'd hacked him, used his trust to find me. I sat there for a long time, staring at that email, feeling something inside me break. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about betrayal. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that email again. My father's name, his words, twisted and used against me. The air in my apartment felt heavy, like the walls themselves knew something I didn't. Around 2 a.m., I finally picked up my phone and dialed him. He answered on the third ring, his voice rough with sleep. "Claire, what's wrong?" I hesitated for a second, trying to hold back the tremor in my voice. "Dad, did you ever send Mom an email about me? About my job?" There was a pause, long, quiet, uneasy. "No," he said finally. "Why would I? You know I haven't spoken to her since..." He stopped mid-sentence, as if the words were suddenly dangerous. I swallowed hard. "She has one from your account. It's got my company name, my salary, everything." For a moment, all I could hear was his breathing, slow, heavy. Then he said softly, "Claire, listen to me. That's not me. I didn't send it." A cold shiver ran down my spine. "Then how did she get it?" "I don't know," he said. "But if she's in contact again, you need to stay away from her. You have no idea what she's capable of." There was something in his voice. Fear. Not the normal kind, but the kind that comes from memory. From something already lived. "Dad," I said quietly, "what happened between you two? You never told me the real story." He sighed deeply, the kind of sigh that carries years of regret. "She wasn't always like that, Claire. When we met, she was bright, ambitious. But after Ryan was born, something changed. Money started to matter more than anything. She got involved with people who promised easy cash, shortcuts, investments. I tried to stop her. She called it controlling. Then one night she packed up and left. Took Ryan, left you with me. I thought she'd come back. She never did." His voice broke for just a second. "Did she ever try to reach out?" I asked. He hesitated. "Once, about 3 years ago. She said she wanted to see you, but I told her no. I didn't trust her. She got angry, said I'd regret it." My heart pounded harder. "Dad, did you ever notice anyone trying to hack your email? Anything strange?" He was silent. Then, "Actually, yes. About a month ago, my account locked me out for a few days, but I thought it was a glitch." My throat went dry. "It wasn't a glitch. She got in." He exhaled slowly. "Then she's planning something." We talked for a while longer, but neither of us could find the right words. When I finally hung up, the night outside felt heavier than before. I double-checked my locks, reset my passwords, even called the bank to freeze my cards. But the fear didn't go away. It sat there right behind my ribs, waiting. The next morning, I went to work like nothing happened, but my mind was miles away. Every email notification made me flinch. Every unknown number on my phone made my heart jump. Then around noon, I got a text. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. You shouldn't have called him. You'll only make it worse. I froze. My hand started trembling. It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a name. I knew who it was. I deleted the message instantly, took a deep breath, and told myself I was done being scared. But fear has a way of slipping through the cracks. That evening, when I pulled into the parking garage beneath my building, I noticed something strange. A small black car parked 2 rows away, engine still running, headlights off. For a second I thought it was nothing, but then I saw a familiar silhouette behind the wheel. Ryan. I felt my pulse in my throat. I turned off my own car, stayed completely still, watching. He didn't move. Didn't get out. Just sat there. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, and snapped a picture. Proof. Then I grabbed my keys and walked quickly to the elevator. My every step echoed in that cold, concrete silence. Upstairs, I locked my door and called the building security. They checked the garage, but by the time they got there, the car was gone. The next day, my father called again. His voice was tense. "Claire, listen carefully," he said. "Don't talk to her. Don't meet her. And whatever you do, don't let her near your accounts. I think she's in trouble, serious trouble." I frowned. "What kind of trouble?" He hesitated. "Financial, legal. She's been moving money for someone. I don't know the details, but she might be under investigation. If she's trying to reach you now, it's not for family. It's because she needs you to cover for her." I sat down hard, my heart pounding. "She used my name before, didn't she?" He didn't answer. "Dad," I said quietly, "tell me the truth." He sighed. "Once, years ago. She took out a loan in your name when you were still a minor. I found out too late. I paid it off before it ruined your credit. I thought she was gone for good after that." My stomach twisted. "So she's done this before?" "Yes," he said. "And she'll do it again if you let her." That night, I got another text. This time, a photo. My building, my car, taken from across the street. The message underneath read, "You can't hide from family." I didn't sleep at all. Every creak in the hallway made my skin crawl. Around 4 a.m., I packed a bag and drove to my dad's place in Ohio. 16 hours on the road with nothing, but fear keeping me awake. When I finally pulled into his driveway, he was waiting on the porch, arms crossed, worry etched deep into his face. He hugged me tighter than he had in years. "You did the right thing," he said. But the moment I stepped inside, I realized something was wrong. His desk drawers were open, papers scattered across the floor. His computer screen still glowing. "Dad," I said, "what happened?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Someone broke in last night," he said quietly. "Didn't take anything valuable. Just files." I looked closer at the screen, an email draft still open. The recipient was Evelyn. The subject line said, "We need to talk before Claire finds out." I stared at that email draft, my heart thudding so loud I could hear it echo inside my head. "Dad," I whispered, "what is this?" He didn't look at me. He just kept rubbing the back of his neck, like he was trying to erase something that wouldn't come off. "It's not what it looks like," he said. I stepped closer, my voice sharper now. "You said you haven't spoken to her in years. Why is there an email waiting to be sent to her?" He sighed heavily and sank down into the chair. "She reached out again, a few weeks ago, said it was urgent. She wanted to make things right before it got out of hand." I crossed my arms, fighting the tremor in my voice. "Got out of hand? What does that even mean?" He looked up at me, eyes tired, glassy. "It means she's not just in debt, Claire. She's in danger, and somehow, we both are." For a few seconds I couldn't speak. The only sound was the hum of his computer fan, spinning too loud in the silence. He continued slower this time. "About 6 months ago, I got a call from someone claiming to represent her. A man. Said she owed him money, a lot of it, and that if she didn't pay, they'd come after her family. He mentioned your name. I thought it was just intimidation, but then emails started showing up, photos of our house, letters with no return address. I felt my stomach twist into knots. Why didn't you tell me?" He looked at me like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "Because I thought I could handle it. Because I thought if I ignored her, it would stop." I leaned over the desk, scanning the draft again. "You were going to reply, weren't you?" He didn't answer, but I could see it in his eyes. "Dad," I said softly, "what did she want from you?" He hesitated, then said, "She wanted me to send her some old paperwork. Tax forms. insurance documents, your birth records. She said she needed them to prove something. But I didn't trust her. I stalled. And now, he gestured toward the mess of papers scattered across the floor. Now someone broke in. A chill ran through me. You think she sent them? I don't know, he said quietly. But whoever it was, they knew exactly what to look for. I picked up one of the files from the floor, a photocopy of my birth certificate. My name, his signature, her signature. It hit me like a wave. She's not just after money, I said. She's after identity, mine. He nodded slowly. I think she's trying to start over. New life, new name, using yours. For a moment, everything froze. The lies, the manipulation, the fake love. It all connected. She hadn't come back for forgiveness. She'd come back for survival. Dad stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the quiet Ohio street. I didn't want to believe she'd go that far, he said, but I've seen what she can do when she's desperate. The silence between us grew thick, heavy. Finally, I said, we need to report this. He turned sharply. No police. What? He shook his head. If we go to the police, they'll dig into everything. Her, me, maybe even you. And if what I suspect is true, she's already entangled with people you don't want attention from. I frowned. You're saying criminals? He looked at me, eyes dark. Worse, the kind who don't forgive mistakes. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. So what do we do? He looked back at the screen and closed the email. We stay quiet, watch, wait. But that night, while he slept, I couldn't. I lay awake in the guest room, listening to the faint creaks of the old house and the ticking of a clock that sounded too loud. Every time a car passed outside, my heart jumped. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. He can't protect you forever. Attached was a picture. My father. Standing in the kitchen that very moment, making coffee. I gasped so loud it hurt. My hands trembled as I ran downstairs. But when I reached the kitchen, he was there, calm, stirring his mug. Claire? He said, startled. What's wrong? I showed him the phone. His face went pale. He glanced toward the window, the curtain slightly open. He moved quickly, yanked it shut, and whispered, They're watching us. The next morning, he insisted we leave the house. Pack your things, he said. We're going somewhere safe. We drove for hours, cutting through back roads, no GPS, no phones on. Finally, he pulled into a small cabin near the edge of a lake, one I hadn't seen since childhood. This place isn't in any records, he said. No one knows about it but me. I wanted to believe him, but something in his tone made me uneasy. There was fear in it, but also guilt. As night fell, we sat by the small fire. He barely spoke, just kept staring at the flames. Finally, I broke the silence. Dad, what aren't you telling me? He looked up slowly, eyes reflecting the firelight. Do you remember when you were a kid, and Mom disappeared for a week before she finally left for good? I nodded. I thought you said she went to visit her sister. He exhaled, voice low. That was a lie. She was arrested, caught laundering money for someone she claimed she was helping. I pulled every string I could to keep her out of jail. But the deal I made, it wasn't clean. My chest tightened. What kind of deal? He stared into the fire, voice barely above a whisper. I took responsibility for her debt. Signed a bond. If she ever ran again, everything she owed would fall on me. They said they'd collect one day. I thought they'd forgotten. The room went silent except for the crackle of wood. They didn't forget, I said quietly. He nodded slowly. No, they didn't. A long pause. Then softly. She's back because they're collecting. And she's using you to pay the price. I sat there frozen, staring at the fire, the truth settling like ash. Everything suddenly made sense. The sudden contact, the hacking, the messages. She wasn't trying to hurt me out of hate. She was trying to survive, even if it meant destroying me to do it. And then came the sound. A car door slamming outside. Dad and I looked at each other, both frozen. He grabbed my wrist, whispering, "Stay here." But I followed him anyway, heart racing, every instinct screaming this was it. Through the cabin window, headlights cut across the trees, slow, deliberate. A shadow moved behind the glass. Then a knock. 3 slow knocks. Dad's face went pale. She found us. The sound of those 3 knocks echoed through the cabin like thunder. Not loud, just steady, slow, deliberate. Dad froze near the door, hand trembling on the handle. "Dad," I whispered, "don't open it." He looked at me, eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Not just fear, but resignation. "If I don't, it'll get worse," he murmured. "You don't understand what she's capable of." Before I could stop him, he opened the door. There she was, Evelyn, my mother, standing under the soft glow of the porch light, rain clinging to her coat. Her hair was slick, her makeup streaked, but her eyes, those eyes were still sharp, calculating. "Hello, Claire," she said, like this was just another family visit. Behind her, a car idled quietly, headlights off. I could see the faint outline of someone, sitting in the driver's seat, watching, waiting. Dad stepped forward, blocking me slightly. "You shouldn't be here," he said firmly. Evelyn smiled faintly, like she'd expected that. "We need to talk. You owe me that much." "I don't owe you anything," he snapped. Her expression hardened. "Oh, but you do. You always have." The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the silence pressing between every breath. Dad finally said, "You have 2 minutes. Then you leave." Evelyn's eyes flicked to me. "You told her, didn't you?" she asked quietly. "You told her everything." I spoke before he could answer. "He didn't have to. I figured it out the moment you broke into his house." Something like pride flickered in her eyes. "Smart girl," she said softly. "Just like me." "Don't flatter yourself," I shot back. She took a small step inside, ignoring the tension like it didn't exist. "You don't understand what's really happening, Claire. You think I came back for money? I came back because if I didn't, they were going to kill me." I frowned. "Who?" She hesitated, eyes darting to the car outside. "People who don't forgive debt. People your father made promises to on my behalf." Dad's jaw tightened. "You brought them into our lives, Evelyn. I tried to save you, but you dragged us both down." Her voice rose, sharp now. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to live like a fugitive, running from everyone, watching over my shoulder every night? Then why involve her?" He shouted, pointing at me. "Why go after Claire?" Her eyes softened, almost sad. "Because they said if I couldn't pay, they'd take her." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. "What?" I whispered. She turned to me, eyes glistening. "They were going to ruin you, Claire. Destroy your career, your reputation. They already have everything they need. Your personal data, your ID, your financials. They can make it look like you've been laundering money for years." I felt my knees go weak. "You gave them my information?" Tears filled her eyes. "It was the only way to buy time. I thought I could fix it before they used it." Dad's voice was low, furious. "You sold your daughter's life to save your own." Evelyn's voice broke. "I was trying to protect her." "No," I said quietly. "You were trying to protect yourself." For a long, painful moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the engine outside. Then faintly a car door opened. A tall man stepped out, his face hidden in shadow. He wore a dark jacket, moved with the slow confidence of someone who'd done this before. Evelyn's face went pale. "They're here for me," she whispered. Dad moved toward the window. "We have to get out." Before he could finish, the man knocked on the open door frame. "Evening," he said, voice calm, almost polite. "Sorry to interrupt your family reunion." Dad instinctively stepped in front of me. "Who are you?" The man smiled thinly. "Just someone collecting what's owed." Evelyn's voice trembled. "I told you I'd get it. I just need more time." He looked at her, cold amusement flickering across his face. "You said that last time." Then his eyes landed on me. "You must be the daughter." My stomach turned. "What do you want from us?" He smiled again, almost friendly. "Nothing. Yet, but your mother made some poor choices. And unfortunately, when one family member borrows, the others often pay the price." Dad's voice was steady now, all fear gone. "You're not getting anything from us." The man tilted his head. "You sure about that?" He reached into his jacket, not for a gun, but a phone. He held up the screen. My photo was on it. My workplace. My apartment. "Nice view from your balcony," he said. "Shame if something happened to it." I felt the blood drain from my face. Evelyn stepped forward quickly. "Please," she said, desperate now. "Leave her out of this. I'll get the money. I swear." He studied her for a moment, then pocketed the phone. "You've got 72 hours, he said quietly. "After that," I stopped being polite. He turned, walked back to the car, and disappeared into the dark road beyond the trees. The moment the sound of his tires faded, Evelyn collapsed into a chair, shaking. Dad shut the door and locked it twice. I stood there, still frozen, trying to breathe. What just happened? Evelyn wiped her face. That was a warning. Next time they won't talk. Dad sat down across from her. How much do you owe? Her voice was small, fragile. 150,000. He closed his eyes. Jesus, Evelyn. I didn't mean for it to get this far, she whispered. It started with a business loan, then interest, then threats. I thought if I could just buy time. I interrupted, my voice trembling with anger. And you thought giving them my life would help you buy time? Tears streamed down her face. I didn't think, Claire. I panicked. The clock on the wall ticked louder and louder. Finally, Dad stood. You're leaving tonight, he said. Both of you. I'll handle this. No, I said sharply. You can't. We'll find another way. But his tone was final. It's not up for debate. He walked into his study, closing the door behind him. I heard drawers opening, papers shifting, a quiet click, the sound of a safe. Evelyn looked at me with red, tired eyes. You think he's doing this to save us? She said softly. But you don't know what he's really hiding. I frowned. What do you mean? She hesitated, then whispered, That debt. It wasn't just mine. He took it too. He was part of it from the start. My breath caught. You're lying. She shook her head slowly. You think your father's a hero, but he's been playing both sides since the beginning. And before I could respond, the door to his study creaked open, and he was standing there, a bag in his hand, his face pale as if he'd heard every word. Dad stood in the doorway, the duffel bag dangling from his hand. His expression wasn't angry. It was something worse. Defeated. How long have you been standing there? Evelyn asked quietly. Long enough, he said. His voice was calm, but it carried a weight that filled the whole room. I stepped closer. Dad, what's she talking about? What did she mean by you were part of it? He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the floor, then slowly set the bag down. Evelyn crossed her arms. Go on, tell her. She deserves to know. He looked up at me, eyes tired but sharp. I did take the loan, he said finally. But it wasn't for me. It was for your mother. Evelyn laughed bitterly. Oh, that's rich. You took it after you left me, Robert. Don't twist this into some noble sacrifice. He ignored her. Claire, after the divorce, your mom was already in deep with those people. I tried to help, to pay them off quietly, but they wanted more. They always do. So you borrowed money from the same people? I asked, disbelief in my voice. He nodded. I thought I could buy her time. Protect you from all this. Evelyn's voice cracked. You didn't protect her. You tied her to them forever. He turned to her sharply. And you think disappearing solved it? You think faking your own debt trail made them forget? What are you saying? I asked, voice trembling. Dad sighed deeply. Your mother never ran from them. She worked for them. The room went silent. Evelyn's eyes widened, genuine shock flashing for the first time. That's not true. He looked right at her. You delivered clients, didn't you? People who owed money. People desperate for loans. That's how you stayed alive. She shook her head. You're twisting it. I did what I had to do. That's what they all say, he muttered. I could feel the air grow heavier. My mind was spinning. Everything I'd believed about both of them was falling apart. Stop, I said, stepping between them. Just tell me the truth. Both of you. Evelyn's lip quivered. They came to me after you were born. I owed them money, a lot. Your father tried to help. But when they realized he was an accountant, they saw an opportunity. They wanted inside information, access to clients, hidden accounts. He gave it to them. I turned to Dad, horrified. Is that true? He didn't deny it. He just said quietly, it was the only way to keep you safe. I laughed, a small broken laugh. Safe? You built my entire life on lies. He took a step closer. You don't understand. You were a target from the moment you were born. They saw you as leverage, and I couldn't let that happen. Evelyn looked at him with disgust. You used her just like they used me. He turned away, rubbing his face with his hands. You think I haven't been paying for this? Every day for 20 years I've been sending them money. Half my salary, half my savings. I thought if I kept paying, they'd leave you alone. I whispered. And now? His eyes met mine, filled with regret. Now they're done waiting. The silence that followed felt endless. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice. Outside, headlights washed across the windows. 2 cars this time. Evelyn stood instantly. They're not supposed to be here yet. Dad grabbed the duffel bag and motioned toward the back door. Claire, go. Out the back now. I'm not leaving you, I said. He turned to me, eyes fierce. You will if you want to live. Evelyn's phone buzzed on the table. She looked at the screen, face draining of color. It's them. Don't answer, Dad said quickly. She hesitated, then did the opposite. She answered. A male voice came through, low and smooth. You had 72 hours, Evelyn. It's been 24. We don't like impatience, but we hate dishonesty more. Her hand shook. Please. We're working on it. You had your chance. The line went dead. A knock followed immediately, heavy this time. Not polite, not patient. Dad pulled open the duffel bag. Inside, cash, passports, a gun. Robert, Evelyn whispered, horrified. You said you didn't keep that. I lied, he said simply. The next few seconds were chaos. Footsteps on the porch. The sound of the door handle rattling. Dad looked at me. Through the window, go! I ran to the back, Evelyn right behind me. We scrambled through the mud, the cold night biting at our skin. I could hear voices shouting, glass breaking. Then a gunshot. I froze. Evelyn grabbed my arm. Keep moving! We dove behind the old woodpile near the shed. From there I could see the cabin through the trees. Lights flashing. Shadows moving inside. Another gunshot. Then silence. My heart was hammering so loud I could barely hear. Evelyn's breathing was ragged. He's gone, she whispered. I shook my head violently. You don't know that. Before she could answer, the front door burst open. 2 men stepped out, one holding the gun, the other dragging someone by the collar. My stomach dropped. It was Dad. He was still breathing, barely. The taller man shoved him to his knees. You should have paid up, Robert. Evelyn clutched my hand. We have to run. But I couldn't move. I watched as Dad looked up, blood on his face, and somehow, he saw me through the trees. Our eyes met for just one heartbeat. He mouthed a single word. Go! Then the gun fired. I bit down on a scream as Evelyn pulled me backward, deeper into the woods. We ran, branches clawing at our clothes, mud swallowing our shoes, the world spinning around us. Finally, when the gunfire faded, we collapsed near the old creek. I turned to her, sobbing. You did this! She didn't deny it. She just stared at the water, whispering, You think it's over? It's not. He had something they want, and now they think you have it. I stared at her, shivering. What are you talking about? She looked up at me, her face hollow, voice trembling. The ledger, she said. Your father's book. It has all their transactions, all their clients, all the evidence. If you have it, Claire, they'll come for you next. Rain started again, soft at first, then heavy enough to drown the sound of everything else. I sat there beside the creek, soaked and shaking, staring at the spot where my father had been a few minutes ago. Evelyn kept whispering the same words over and over. The ledger, like it was both a warning and a curse. I finally looked up at her. Where is it? She wiped mud from her face. I don't know, but I know he had it. I laughed bitterly. Of course you don't know. You never know, do you? Her voice cracked. He didn't trust me with it, Claire. Not after what I did. Thunder rolled overhead. The creek swelled, black water rushing past. Every instinct told me to keep moving, but I couldn't. Not until I understood. Why would Dad keep a ledger? I asked. Why not just destroy it? Evelyn hesitated. Because he was planning to use it, to bring them down. My breath caught. Then why didn't he? She looked at me, eyes hollow. Because they had you. That single sentence felt like a blade through the chest. I didn't want to believe it, but it explained everything. The secret money, the fear, the lies. He told me once, she continued softly, that when the time came, you'd know where to look. I frowned. What does that even mean? Her gaze drifted toward the trees. He said it was somewhere safe, somewhere that only you could find. Lightning flashed, and for a split second, I saw the outline of the old cabin through the branches, glowing faintly from the chaos inside. I stood up. I'm going back. Evelyn grabbed my arm. No, you're not. They'll still be there! I don't care, I said. If that ledger's in there, it's the only proof of who they are. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Proof won't matter if you're dead. I pulled away from her. Then you can stay here and hide. I'm done running. For a moment, I thought she might try to stop me, but she didn't. She just whispered, "You're your father's daughter." I turned and started back through the woods. The closer I got to the cabin, the quieter everything became. No more shouting. No more engines. Just the whisper of rain. When I reached the clearing, I saw the front door hanging off its hinges. The living room torn apart. No bodies. No blood. Only silence. I moved carefully through the mess, stepping over broken glass and scattered papers. My hands were shaking, but my mind was sharp now, focused. Dad's study door was open. The safe behind the desk empty. But then I saw it. A small note, taped to the inside of the safe's door. My name, written in his handwriting. I pulled it off with trembling fingers and unfolded it. If you're reading this, it means they found me first. Don't trust what your mother says. The ledger isn't here. It's where I taught you to hide from storms. I froze. Where I taught you to hide from storms. Memories flooded back. The old storage cellar beneath our lake house miles away. I was 8 when he first showed it to me. A secret place under the dock where we'd hide during thunderstorms, listening to the rain hammer above. That had to be it. I slipped the note into my pocket, grabbed the keys from the wall hook and turned to leave. But before I reached the door, I heard movement outside. A crunch of gravel. 2 voices. Male. I ducked behind the counter, heart pounding. "Check the back," one of them said. "The boss thinks she might have come back for something." Footsteps creaked across the porch. I looked toward the kitchen window. The side door was still open, leading out to the woods. I crawled low, careful not to make a sound, and slipped through it just as the men entered the living room. "Anything?" one called out. "Just a mess." No sign of her. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I ran. By dawn, I reached the highway. Mud streaked my clothes, my shoes ruined, my breath clouding in the cold morning air. I found a diner just opening and sat in the corner booth, hands wrapped around a cup of black coffee. Every sound made me flinch. The doorbell, the clink of plates, the hum of conversation. I kept hearing my father's voice in my head. "Don't trust what your mother says." I pulled out the note again, tracing the letters with my finger. If the ledger was real, and if it was where I thought, it might be the only thing that could expose them. Then my phone buzzed. A known number. I almost ignored it, but something in me said to answer. "Claire?" My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "It's Detective Hanley," the voice said. "I'm with the county sheriff's office. We found your father's vehicle about 5 miles south of your cabin." I swallowed hard. "Is he—" "He's alive," the detective said quickly. "In critical condition, but alive." I couldn't speak. "There's something else," Hanley continued. "Before we moved him, he said a name, yours, and told us one thing." "What?" "Find the book before she does." I closed my eyes. The world tilted. "Detective," I said carefully. "Did anyone else show up at the scene?" "A woman, about 50, dark hair, gray coat." He hesitated. "She was here when we arrived. Said she was your mother, but she disappeared before we could question her." My chest tightened. "You have to find her." "We're trying," he said. "If she contacts you, call us immediately." "Don't meet her alone." "I understand," I lied. When the call ended, I stared out the diner window at the gray morning light. Somewhere between the truth and the lies, between my parents' secrets and my own fear, one thing had become clear. Whatever that ledger held, it was worth killing for. And if Dad was right, Mom was already on her way to get it. I tossed a few bills on the counter and walked out, the note still clutched in my hand. The road stretched ahead, wet and glistening in the pale light. At the end of it waited the lake house and whatever my father had been protecting. All these years, I whispered under my breath. "Hang on, Dad. I'll find it first." Then I started walking. The road to the lake house felt endless. Mist rolled low across the asphalt, curling around the trees like smoke. Every few minutes a truck passed, its headlights cutting through the fog, and then I was alone again. Just the sound of tires on wet, pavement and the whisper of rain against the windshield. Dad's old Jeep handled like a ghost from another life. His jacket still hung on the passenger seat, faintly smelling of pine and coffee. I kept catching myself glancing at it, half expecting him to turn his head and tell me what to do next. When I finally turned down the gravel path that led to the lake, dawn was bleeding into morning. The sky was pale and heavy, clouds hanging low enough to touch. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Weather-worn, the paint peeling, shutters half broken. But the dock was still there, stretching out over the water like a quiet memory. I parked, cut the engine, and listened. Nothing but the soft lap of waves against the shore. For a second, I let myself breathe. Then I went inside. The air was stale and cold. Dust motes hung in the light, seeping through the curtains. Everything was exactly where it had been the last summer. We'd stayed here, old magazines, half-burned candles, the photo of me on the porch with my parents. Smiling like we actually were a family, I swallowed hard and started searching. Drawers, cabinets, under floorboards, nothing. Then I saw it. The trapdoor by the pantry, half hidden under a rug. The cellar. My heart kicked into a faster rhythm. I pulled the rug aside and yanked the door open. A breath of cold air rose from below, carrying the smell of damp earth and metal. I grabbed a flashlight from the counter, switched it on, and climbed down. The cellar hadn't changed. Concrete floor, shelves lined with jars of old nails, fishing gear, boxes labeled in my father's neat handwriting. And then, there, tucked behind a stack of paint cans, an old wooden chest. I knelt, brushed away the dust, and found a small brass lock hanging open. Inside was a thick leather-bound book, edges cracked with age. The ledger. For a moment I just stared at it. The thing people had died for. The thing my father had protected for decades. I opened it carefully. Page after page, written in Dad's handwriting, filled with names, dates, and numbers. Offshore accounts, transfers, shell companies. Every line was a thread connecting. Powerful men to crimes that could burn entire corporations to the ground. And one name kept repeating. The Hanley Group. My stomach turned. Hanley, the detective who'd called me. A floorboard creaked above me. I froze. Another step. Then another. Someone was in the house. I killed the flashlight and crouched in the shadows, clutching the ledger to my chest. Footsteps descended the stairs, slow, deliberate. A beam of light cut through the dark. "Claire," a voice said softly. "You can come out now." "Mom." She reached the bottom step, flashlight sweeping the room. "I know you found it," she said. "I saw your car." I stayed silent. She sighed. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." My voice shook. "You told me you didn't know where it was." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "You think I didn't remember the cellar? I just needed you to open it for me. They trust me to deliver it." "They? You mean the people who tried to kill Dad?" Her flashlight paused. "It was never supposed to go that far." "You keep saying that," I whispered. "But somehow it always does." She lowered the light a little. "You don't understand what's inside that book. It's not just names, it's leverage. Everyone in there has blood on their hands. If I turn it over, they'll erase everything. We'll disappear. No one will ever come after us again." I stepped into the beam, my face half lit. "You mean you'll disappear?" Her jaw tightened. "Claire, please. Hand it to me. They're already on their way." I shook my head. "No, I'm not giving them a free pass." Dad wanted the truth to come out. Her expression flickered. Pain, then anger. "You think your father was a saint? He wrote that ledger to blackmail them, not expose them. He was one of them until he realized he couldn't control it." "That's not true, isn't it?" She snapped. "Why do you think he kept paying them all these years?" "He wasn't protecting us. He was protecting himself." The words hit like a slap, but something in her tone didn't feel like truth. It felt like desperation. Behind her, faint headlights glowed through the cracks in the cellar door. "Engines idling. They're here," she whispered. "Claire, please. If they find you with that book, they'll kill you." I backed toward the shelves. "Then we run together." She shook her head. "It's too late for that." For a moment, we just stared at each other, mother and daughter, both terrified, both carrying too many lies. Then the cellar door above burst open. Voices shouted. Heavy boots pounded on the stairs. Mom turned, flashlight swinging. "Go," she hissed. I darted behind the shelves as the men reached the bottom. Two of them, same suits, same calm menace. One of them, the taller, smiled when he saw her. "Evelyn," he said. "You've been busy." She lifted her hands slowly. "I have what you want." His eyes scanned the room. "And where's the girl?" "I sent her away." He stepped closer. "You're lying." She held his gaze. "You shoot me, you'll never find it." He studied her for a moment, then nodded to the other man. "Search the place. As he turned away, she whispered to me, so softly I almost missed it. "Doc, go." I clutched the ledger and crept toward the back hatch, the old maintenance door that opened near the waterline. The sound of boots and shouted orders filled the cellar, but the rain outside masked my steps. When I reached the hatch, I glanced back one last time. Mom was standing between them and the shelves, hands trembling, but she didn't look scared. She looked determined. The taller man raised his gun. I slipped out the door before the shot rang out. The rain hit me like ice as I stumbled toward the dock. My lungs burned, my legs heavy, but I didn't stop. Behind me, light flared through the cracks of the cabin, then went out. The lake stretched ahead, dark, endless, silent. I crouched under the dock, clutching the ledger against my chest, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the thunder. Above, I heard men shouting, then the sound of a boat engine starting. They were searching the water. I took a breath that felt like fire and whispered, "You wanted me to find it, Dad. I did." Then I looked at the ledger, at all. The names and secrets, and realized something chilling. At the very end of the book, scrawled in my father's handwriting, was a final line. "If you're reading this, Claire, trust no one, especially Hanley." The boat's engine roared somewhere on the far side of the lake, its sound bouncing across the dark water like a ghost. I stayed hidden under the dock until the echoes faded. My hands were shaking, my breath short and uneven. The ledger was soaked through, its leather cover heavy with rain, but the pages inside were still dry, sealed in plastic, just like Dad would have done, always one step ahead. I crawled out and looked across the lake. Fog drifted low over the surface, glowing faintly with the reflection of headlights somewhere near the opposite shore. They were searching, and I knew exactly who they were waiting for. I found the old rowboat tied under the dock, the same one Dad used when we went fishing. The oars were still there, cracked and splintered, but strong enough. I climbed in, pushed off, and began to row. Each pull burned my arms, but it felt right. Steady, quiet, deliberate. Rain whispered across the surface of the lake, muffling everything else. Halfway across, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. For a second, I hesitated. Then I answered. "Claire," said Detective Hanley's voice, smooth as ever. "You're a hard woman to find." I froze. "You've been looking for me?" "Of course. You've been through something awful. We just want to make sure you're safe." I almost laughed. "You mean you want the ledger?" A pause. "So you did find it?" His voice was calm, but I could hear something behind it. Satisfaction. "You were part of this all along," I said. "Your name's in here. The Hanley Group. You didn't call to help me. You called to finish what they started." "Careful," he said softly. "You don't understand how deep this goes." "Then explain it." "You think that book's about money?" he said. "It's about control. The people listed there run half the state. Judges, CEOs, cops, politicians. You hand that ledger to the wrong person, and you'll vanish before sunrise." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm not handing it to anyone." His tone changed, lower now. "Claire, you don't have to do this. We can work something out." I didn't answer. "Where are you?" he asked quietly. I ended the call. By the time I reached the far shore, dawn was breaking again. Pale light spilled across the trees, turning the mist to silver. I pulled the boat into the reeds and stumbled onto the muddy bank. My body ached, my clothes torn and soaked. But I was still moving, still breathing. There was an old ranger station a few miles north. Dad used to take me there for cocoa after storms. If I could make it there, maybe I could use their radio. Maybe someone not on Hanley's payroll would listen. I started walking. The woods were quiet except for the rain dripping from the leaves. Every snap of a branch made me flinch. Then behind me, the crunch of footsteps. I turned, and there he was. Hanley. No badge now, no pretense. Just a black raincoat, a pistol in his hand, and that same calm smile. "Should have stayed hidden, Claire," he said. "You made this a lot harder than it needed to be." I backed away slowly, the ledger pressed to my chest. "You killed my father." He shook his head. "Your father killed himself the day he started keeping that book. I just helped him finish it." "Why?" "Because he forgot the rule," Hanley said. "When you work with wolves, you don't get to walk away." He raised the gun. Something inside me went still, the kind of stillness that comes before lightning hits. Dad's voice echoed in my mind. trust no one. I took a slow step back. My heel hit a rock, and an idea. The ledger wasn't just evidence, it was bait. I held it out. You want it? Come take it. He smiled slightly, gladly. As he stepped closer, I threw it, hard, over his shoulder, straight into the lake. Hanley spun, eyes wide, watching it splash and sink. In that split second, I ran. He fired once. The bullet tore through a tree beside me, sending bark flying. I dove into the mud, scrambling up the hill toward the ranger station. My lungs burned, my vision blurred. Another shot, missed. Then I saw it. The radio tower above the tree line rising like salvation. I burst through the clearing, slammed through the ranger cabin door, and locked it behind me. Hanley's footsteps followed. I grabbed the emergency flare gun from the shelf, loaded it, and aimed it at the door. He kicked it open. Enough, he barked. The flare roared. A streak of red fire exploded across the room, hitting the wall behind him and igniting a curtain. He stumbled back, blinded by the light. Flames licked the wooden frame. I ran to the desk, snatched the radio mic, and shouted, "This is Claire Morgan. If anyone's listening, send help to Miller Lake. Officer involved in criminal conspiracy. I have proof." Static, then a voice. "Copy that. Units en route." Hanley turned, eyes wild, smoke curling around him. "You have no idea who you're talking to." "Neither do you," I said. Then the fire reached the gas lamp. The explosion threw both of us backward. I hit the floor hard, ears ringing, vision white. When I crawled outside, coughing, the cabin was already burning fast. Flames tearing through the walls, smoke rising into the sky like a signal. Hanley was gone, maybe dead, maybe not. Sirens echoed in the distance. I stumbled to the edge of the lake and looked out over the water. The ledger was gone, swallowed by the dark. But I remembered the pages, every name, every date. I didn't need the book anymore. I was the book now. A week later, I stood beside my father's hospital bed. He was awake, pale but alive. The doctors said it was a miracle. When he saw me, he smiled weakly. "You found it." I nodded, and I lost it. His eyes softened. "Good." I frowned. "Good?" He squeezed my hand. "If it's gone, they can't use it anymore. You did what I couldn't." Tears filled my eyes. "Dad, Mom, she..." He stopped me gently. "I know." He didn't ask if she made it. Maybe he already knew the answer. Outside the window, morning sunlight touched the lake. He looked at it and whispered, "It's over now." I wasn't sure if he was right. Maybe it was never really over. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. As I left the hospital, I glanced back one last time. My father, alive. My mother, gone, one way or another. The truth, buried underwater, but still echoing in my memory. And maybe someday, when it's safe, I'll tell the world what was in that ledger. But not today. Today I drive. The road ahead glitters with rain, endless and open. I roll down the window, breathe in the clean air and whisper, "Let them come." Then I press the gas and disappear into the light.